Okay, so we are live, and today I will try to do a guide. For the first guide, we will go over early game. What is early game? Early game for me are the first roughly 12 turns, because I think most like turn 16 is a time where a lot of people can be ready to fight for Nexus, and like military conflicts and all that stuff can start, even though they often don't do. But the first like 12 turns, like it's really like just build up your empire and get into a good position. And I think many like new players will often make mistakes in the early game that already like dooms their fate for the rest of the game. So today I will talk about two playstyles in the early game. The one I will just call standard. So what does that mean? Standard will be just a basic explanation how you can play the start with every faction. And I won't go into like faction specific details. That's something like people have to figure out for themselves, or maybe I will one day do like faction guides. And I will talk about Council 1 Nexus, or short C1 Nexus openness. What I will not talk about is like early game or like how to like specifically adjust to like, for example, Ixidar, because Ixidar doesn't want to build support, which means that you will have a very different kind of build. So let's just go into a game, and I will talk a lot about like what can you think about like early game decisions and all that stuff. I will play Kalazan Aggressor. As I said, like it's not specifically for one leader. Why I decided to play this leader is one reason: you start on a witch planet, which is in my opinion the worst starting planet you can have. So it might create more interesting decisions. Also, no overpowered eco ability that can make stuff easier in the early game. Yeah, so we will just go against Tactician. This doesn't really matter because we will only play the first few turns anyways. Okay, so this is already very interesting, because what is the goal for the first few turns? And the number one goal is I need to find a planet where I can build support. Sometimes my home planet can already do that. Sometimes I have to look for one. Even if you have an advanced planet, you can build support on your home planet, but even then you normally want to find like better planets to build on. Like that means populous planets, because cities are cheaper than embassies. And now we need to realize this is like exactly the start I was hoping for, because it's really bad, and I think it's one you can easily get lost on. Because we actually don't have any populous or advanced planet around us. So this is immediate trouble. The good thing though is if you look down at our edict bar, that our constructions are drawn in, this is second turn, third turn, fourth turn, and fifth turn. So basically the way constructing works is you cannot construct on a planet you just took. So basically if I want to construct on turn 3, I need to take a planet on turn 2. That's pretty much impossible because we're just like too far away. So we will probably not be able to play this for support, which is normally what you want to do. Like the first 5-6 constructions should all be support. So now we check edicts. A research is a very good one. And also here you need to think about, in your starting deck you have 14 edicts. You draw 3 edicts per turn. And the edicts always go at the end of the queue. So like if I play research, you can see it gets added at the end of the queue. So that means if I play the edict first in my turn, I will actually draw it in 4 turns. The second and third edict played in the turn will be drawn in 5 turns. So the first edict played is very important. Also, you can, like, if you get like extra edicts from trades, like for example, this extra construction edict will change how this works. So here, my first click wants to be research, and I have a very, very good find in adaptive administration, because that will actually give me support, and I'm massively lacking that. So we can support. I just realized that I apparently skipped 1 turn at some point, but we will just like go on. And now I have the politic. So it's important to know politic is a very expensive edict, and you always need to be sure that you can actually pay for it. In this scenario, like normally you want to research politic research, but in this case actually I will politic culture.
Direction confirmed.
And then support with the fleet movement. If this would have been the first time, I would not have been able to do that, so then you can also do the slightly cheaper option of just giving up on fleet movement and not do anything. Yeah. So maybe, assuming that this will be the first turn, we would have to decide if we want to move our fleet or if we want to use this edict. In this case, as a Kel, I would decide to move my fleet and then end the turn. So now we make another bad discovery. First of all, we don't have a planet next to Nexus. Planets next to Nexus are special because they have higher yields than other planets. So now we look at the remaining cards.
New priority established.
And can either now research. Military tradition is a good find, but I will talk about tags on another occasion. So here culture looks very good because we don't have a construction target, and culture in general is an extremely powerful edict. So
counter-espionage cell established.
We take this, and now what we can do is we can move into this system, and at the same time we can
cultural push initiated.
Continue using our culture. We can explore. Here what's very important is regarding culture. Normally you only want to culture planets that you don't really want to take soon. Like taking this planet in like 10, 15 turns may be fine, but I don't want to take these 2 planets like in the next 10 turns. Then it's fine to culture them early on. Also, we are of course looking for good bonuses. 5 ammunition is like okay-ish. But in this situation, I slightly prefer the positioning of having this planet in Nebula. Also with a connection to Nexus, this gives us a lot of great opportunities because our fleets will be difficult to spot. And normally when you play Kalazan, you always want to click rally. So we go on. Here we take the extra money. We also found support planets in the back. So here what we will do is we will pick army strength. That's like what I would call more of like a Kalazan specific play. And our turn. We will pick up even more army strength. And now we can start our support production. This is a very decent pick on Karazhan, so we'll go for that. And since we already have found
Convoy dispatched.
another player, we can also use trade. So now here, normally I want one of
Direction
those
confirmed.
politics to go into research.
System control
But since I
established.
liked so much early game, I really
New
like my support
project under
production.
construction.
So I will double
Construction
politic
underway.
here, and actually, like if we look back, we can see that we don't really need to take this planet.
New
And
priority
I straight up
established.
made a mistake.
Direction
I think that's one
confirmed.
of the main points I want to speak about in this guide. People often at the start of games start to take a bunch of planets everywhere because they're like, oh, I can take a planet that's good. But planets have two big disadvantages. First of all, your army strength, so this value down here, is divided through the number of your planets and then rounded up. That's actually the defense you can see here. So I have 2 planets. So 23 divided by 2 is 11.5, rounded up is 12. So that's the army strength here. The home planet is a special case because that always gets plus 5. So that's here 12 plus 5 equals 17. If I now take this planet, you can see that my army strength will only be 9. Because of course,
System control
in this case,
established.
our army strength rises slightly, but still 25. Divided by 3 is 8 point something, and that gets rounded up to 9. The second and even more important point is that a planet has an upkeep. So if I go down here to my support production, I can see that I have -2 support for systems controlled. This means that in the early game, the more planets I have, the less actions I will be able to do. But actions are extremely important, so we really want to try to maximize those. Therefore, don't take too many planets. Get a support planet. Maybe move a fleet if you have the support to move fleets. Move to the next planet, but especially if it's like one in the back, don't be in a rush to take it. Take your time. Here we can put down another culture.
Cultural push initiated.
We can now counter-espionage
Spy
our most
hunters
important planet,
activated.
which in this case is a support planet. And we can
Fleet commission
start setting
confirmed.
up a capital fleet. Normally, like capital fleets, you don't need them turn like before the first council, but somewhere around the first council, you want to start building up a capital fleet because capital fleets are basically the best fleet in the game. There are some special scenarios, and maybe like if you're relatively experienced, you will sometimes see like, oh, carriers are actually super valuable. But I think normally like going capital ships is just like by far the safest route. That's the reason why we go for this here. And now we can actually also command this. Honor
Fleet
Guard is
role
like an
updated.
extremely good command, especially like until like the mid game. This is like basically the best command you can have on a fleet to just maximize power. Of course, like the screening effect also can have slight negative effects on you, but normally this is just like the one of the best commands in the game. So we can end our turn. Yeah, here's something very important. We just got 5 points from culture. That's why going culture early is really important. Sometimes you can even politic into it once, because it does not only grant points, which like over the game will stack up, because of course I will keep my culture. That means while now I get already maybe like 3 points more than the other 3 players that went only with 1 culture, and 5 more points than the players that didn't play any culture. But also in the next council, I will keep my lead and probably make even more points off the culture I played. Like early culture is really, really impactful. Additionally, I get the resources from culture as well as view range. Like culture view range is able to, like, if you have a culture on a planet, you can see all ships on that planet. Plus you can see adjacent planets or systems that are not in a nebula. It's important to know that like if somebody would have, like if I would only have culture on this planet, I would not be able to see Kotai. because Kota is actually in a nebula, so cultures doesn't give you enough vision to see into the nebula. Now we will get the first voting. I think here it's very important to look at all the titles. Um, check out like what can work, what is my future plan. Skelazan, of course, like occupy the most planets from rival empires, and intrusive is really good because intrusive is normally gained by the person that holds Nexus. And Warlord is just very good for us. I don't really want to go for Racketeer. Populist is a decent title because I can steal planets from other players. But I would prefer to go for one of these. But I don't really have the votes anyways. So instead I will probably do in this case something like this. Put one vote here, one vote here. Basically every title that got any votes will stay until the next council. And by giving these two like military focused titles and resolution one vote, I can be sure to that I have a chance to vote for them the next council. Here we go for populist, which is fine. We can try to contest that later. But for now, we just want to make sure. Get support. Get the rally. Use explore because it's also a very good edict.
Additional ships under construction.
And we will build up some fleets. And end our turn. Here in exploits normally don't pay science for anything. We just go extra support.
Scientists have received your orders.
Diplomacy is also very important. Play early on, so here we can just go for a pact. +1 for capitals is very good. I will try to trade it him for a fair price. Now I can no longer build cities on this planet, so I need to take the next populous planet for the upcoming construction edict. And now I can basically decide if I want to give this a command. And actually I can do that.
New fleet orders confirmed.
Now at this point in time, actually I feel like 11 support income is very decent. I increase it to 12 this turn. I don't need to push any longer, so I can politic research, increase my military power, and we can trade for the neutral planet for 9 because it only costs us 4 support, so this is a net positive. So now here, culturing Rodarians are very good.
Direction confirmed.
We check the research.
Campaign underway.
Now we can also train one of our ships. We can go towards Nexus with it. And in the back, it's like a close call.
Direction confirmed.
We can go free research. Yeah. Continue our support production. You protect our second planet, and now here the rule of thumb is that you actually want to, if you have like, especially like when you have like +10 support income, you can basically do 4 actions every turn without any problems. So we will also give this fleet already honor guard. We don't really need it now. It doesn't really get us anything, but it's an action. Or now, if I reconsider, we can actually already move into Kotai, because I said that I want to take this planet at some point. So we can already start moving towards it. We used 4 actions. When we have a support income of 13, that means that we got a plus of 3 support for the next turn. That's very nice because that means that we can take even more actions next turn. Here, like exploring nebula slots is pretty good, so we will use that option. while at the same time yeah,
You
this was
need more
probably a slight
materials.
misplay. I would have liked to be able to have enough materials to research on level 4 here. We will just
Research
go trade,
priority confirmed.
click our edicts, and I will
Fleet
get another
deployment
fleet in
underway.
production. We will lose some on Nexus. And this is roughly the early game, already at like turn 15. So yeah, I will click through some of the stuff. So let's do like a short recap. What's the most important rule in the early game? Find a support planet. Don't be scared to not take every planet, like especially the AI really likes to just come up and take all the planets around herself, which is quite problematic for me in this position because now I already like as AI will also take this planet and my empire will not really be connected, which could become a difficulty later on during defending. But in this situation, like real players will normally play like slightly more defensive. Also, like the first support planet we found was in such a bad location, was of course slightly unlucky. Second rule of thumb, roughly around the first council, start building a capital fleet. As you can see, this capital fleet now here is massively helpful for us to take Nexus. For the second council, yeah, don't take too many planets. Use politic to either research, go culture, go diplomacy, or construct if you fell behind in your support economy early on. And now I want to shortly talk about all the edicts in general. When you start out the game, you can actually only make 3 to 4 actions per turn. What that means is like I think you have like a plus of 7 or 8 support per turn. So if you save, if you do 3 action one turn, you can actually do 4 in the next one. This means that I will not be able to make all the movements with my fleets, while also play all the edicts in my hand. So we need to decide which edicts have priority above others. The most important edict, in my opinion, is research and construction. Like these two edicts, you really don't want to miss them. In this game, we missed like one construction could not go on a city. Normally, I want all my early constructions to be cities or embassies. If you start with one of the factions that don't have a support planet, you can sometimes build like 1 or 2 material buildings. That's not terrible, and I think it's better than just like skipping the edict. But if you have the chance to build support, build support. Then we have the research edict, which
Direction
is like
confirmed.
obviously very powerful because it allows you to contest. It allows you to get like high tech means basically that you will dominate the late game. And I think especially like teching quickly and using politics to like quickly tech to like certain key techs for the build you are playing is super important. What exactly makes it tech like a key tech is something I will talk about in another guide maybe. So these two are like our priority 1 edicts. Then in for some factions your leader edict will be helpful to fulfill your agenda. In that case, you also normally don't want to miss that agenda. Like in this case, like the Bloodlust is nice, but Rally is not like a key card I have to play. It's if it comes up, we can go for it, but normally, like if I have like more important actions I can do, like double construct and move a
Your
fleet into an
priority
important
established.
system, then I will skip rally. If we are talking something like Kelazan Hunter, who basically gets XP when he places Edict, then of course we cannot skip on that card. Faction Edict is in a similar situation, like training is not really super useful in the early game. You can skip this until you are kind of settled and you already have a good support production going. Uh, for other leaders, sometimes it's more useful, but normally it's not on the level of construction or research. One of the edicts that is up there is actually Invest. I will also always have priority on playing Invest as Shinor, and I think that actually might already be it. I'm not sure, like, other brands Archdruid is also very strong, but a lot of factions have like more of like late game edicts like Holy Wars, Training, Refining of Rodarians, the extra project slot from third one. All of those like only get good in like the mid to late game, and they actually also have like an extra cost, so we normally don't want to use that early on. So then there's Trade. Trade is a very optional edict, since if you play Trade on a neutral planet, you will immediately get the return of your trade the upcoming turn. This means that, like, obviously if you can trade for more coins than you spend, since the value is like 2 coins equal 1 support, then of course you always place the trade edict, but often you will just, like, as most leaders start with 5 trade value, you will often just skip trade early on. Same goes for command, like early commands are nice, but it normally is not a big problem to see if you maybe get a good command and attack, and then attack when command comes around the second or even third time. Espionage is also one of those optional edicts. Espionage has a lot of very nice effects. You can either place a counter espionage on some of your key planets. Getting this done early normally gives you a great advantage because in the best case scenario, of course, you have counter espionage on all your planets. So whenever somebody tries to plot you, they get stopped and they will try a few times and then they will be like, ah, this person always has counter espionage everywhere. It's not worth it to break him or too expensive to get through this counter espionage. So early counter espionage can be very good, but it shouldn't, like, it's the value only comes in like the mid to late game of those actions, so you shouldn't prioritize that higher than anything that sets you up for like a good mid game, like support production, taking the correct planets, getting your research online, all that stuff. Then maybe the fourth optional edict is Explore. Explore is a good edict because when you explore a system, you will also get vision on adjacent systems. For example, I used Explore in this game on the system back here and actually found out about this planet back here, which most likely I would have not found otherwise. I also like specifically used Explore back here to get vision on the planets in the backline. Also, a lot of Explore rewards are easily better than like 3 or 4 support, but it's always a gamble if you will find something good, and if the reward is actually helpful for you at the moment, you could also find like a space immoba that you can actually not kill and maybe also not buy with your science at that point in time, and it maybe even block you from like important planets. So it can also be negative. Still, it's important to know that Normally explore is a decent edict, and if I'm stuck in a position where I have very little knowledge of the map, explore can also be used to find out about surrounding planets. So maybe if we would have started this game with an explore in hand, I would have maybe explored this system or maybe this system early on to get the extra vision, and I would have found out about one of these two support planets much earlier, and instead of going through this defensive fleet to Vanamol, I would have taken one of these two planets. Then we come to two very important edicts, which are culture and diplomacy. Diplomacy has a problem that normally in the early game, when you draw it the first time, most likely you will have not made visual contact with any other player, so you will always have to skip it. You can also use diplomacy to take planets, but for most factions that's not really something you want to do. Yeah, Goklo also said that you can, like, if you explore on a planet, you actually have a chance to find a unique resource, which are normally like extremely powerful edicts, better than the normal edicts. Um, Also, as far as I know, there is a slightly increased chance, or like there's a high chance that at least one of the planets neighboring your home planet contains such a unique resource. So using explore on those planets is also always very good. For diplomacy, when it comes around the second time, normally you always want to go either research pact or military pact with one of your neighbors, because pacts do not only give points, which of course is extremely important, but they also generate resources for an incredibly cheap price, like getting 4 army strengths and 6 munitions for basically one action, while also getting a point. It's completely crazy if you think about that. Like, a mega structure basically shows that 1 point is already worth 25 production. So yeah, diplomacy very powerful. You can also politic into diplomacy if you feel like it. On the other hand, it depends kind of on your playstyle. People like Aspar will like always politic diplomacy most likely. But if you don't want to go like super diplomatic in a game, you can also just play the diplomacies you get, because in most games you will have enough time to get like a bunch of pacts with everyone until the game has ended, and deals that not include pacts are sometimes more difficult to pull off, so that would have slightly lower priority. Also, you don't get the incredibly strong pact bonus after you have 2 pacts, because per faction you can only have 2 pacts. And then culture, I think, is maybe the most underestimated edict in the early game. I already talked shortly about it. It generates view range, it generates resources, it generates an insane amount of points during the game. For example, against these AIs, you like obviously don't play that well. Still, since my culture playing here will probably generate 25 points over the first 40 turns, 40 turns of the game. That's already like 25% of the victory condition. And only getting like 10 points because you just felt like, oh, it cost me 3 or 4 support to build this, is not always a great idea. So that are like some rough ideas for the early game. As I said, main focus, don't get too many planets, and try to always build up support in the early game. Now I want to look at a second strategy for the early game, which is getting Nexus for the first council already. And this strategy has two approaches. One of them is using diplomacy to take over Nexus, which is based on the tech diplomatic vessel, which reduces the cost to annex a neutral system by 50%, which then reduces the cost of taking Nexus to like 20 support, which is still a lot, but if your first research edict shows you that you can pick up diplomatic vessel and you have a diplomacy around the 7th or 8th turn of the game, then this can be a very, very solid option. The other way to get Nexus set early on is just by brute force. So in this guide, I will only showcase my attempt on taking Nexus by using brute force, because in my opinion, like diplomatic vessel is like very, very easy to pull off. You just need to basically practice this a few times to get like a feeling for like how many actions can I use such that I still have enough support left to take Nexus. Also, maybe another trick is that if I wanted to use diplomacy to take over a planet, I need a fleet in a neighboring system. But in the systems next to Nexus, all planets are guaranteed to have a defending fleet. So sometimes it can be a good trick to like move into the planet next to Nexus the turn before you will draw your diplomacy. Because in that, if you do it like that, the turn afterwards you will draw diplomacy and you will have your ship on the planet next to Nexus. And even if you will lose the combat and lose all your ships, you will actually still be able to use diplomacy on Nexus. Diplomatic vessels has two big weaknesses, or maybe like a third, but the third weakness is a weakness of all strategies that resolve around taking Nexus early on. The diplomatic vessel unique weakness is that if another person also uses diplomacy in the same turn on Nexus, actually nobody will get the planet, but you also won't get your support back. So if that should ever happen, you will actually just straight up lose 20 support and get nothing in return, which is a huge setback. Still, of course, it's a very rare situation because you can also always check the tech of other players and find out if somebody is also going for diplomatic vessels Nexus. The second weakness is if another player moved ships into Nexus, you can actually not play diplomacy on it. So that means that normally a strategy that resolves about attacking Nexus and taking all the ships will beat the diplomatic strategy to take Nexus. The upside of diplomatic vessel is that it's far easier to pull off a diplomatic vessel C1 Nexus than to do it with military. A general weakness of C1 Nexus is that it's never 100% guaranteed, and you will normally basically give up a lot of early game tempo to have enough resources to be able to take Nexus. So if it fails, you will actually be in a slightly disadvantageous position. So I will try to show C1 Nexus also using Kalazan Aggressor. First things, we look at the map, we find out Nexus is below us. And this is pretty unlucky. We have both constructions coming up early on.
Construction underway. Fleet commission confirmed.
So what I will do here is This is a small trick you can use, basically. I will even slightly reconsider
Survey
this
vessel en route.
to increase my odds on this
Fleet
working.
deployment underway.
First of all, I built one army strength building because after I pick the militarist boost, I will only need 4 ships to take Nexus because Nexus, as you can see, has 6 defenses, and the way this is calculated, basically your army strength divided by 10 rounded down is the number of reduction of ships you need to take a planet. So this defense is 6. Currently my army strength is 18, so I would need 6 minus 10 minus 18 divided by 10 rounded down, so minus 1 equals 5 ships, but as soon as I pick up this plus 15%, I would actually only need 4 ships. So this is really good, and since I cannot use this construction to build support, we can also do that. Now I will use Explore in this system. The reason for that is that this planet is very good, so I don't mind taking it later at some point anyways, and I can now use the exploration to find out what's the quickest way to reach Nexus. Okay, we found Nexus, we get extra support, which of course is huge.
Direction confirmed.
Yeah, here we need to make a somewhat difficult decision on what exactly we want to skill.
Reinforcements pending.
Yeah,
Construction
here we'll build a
underway.
mine. We also found a connection directly to Nexus, and I will even use my command
New
edict
fleet orders
to
confirmed.
increase my power here.
Scientists have received your orders.
This is a hard choice.
Scientists have received your orders. Research
We
priority
go for
confirmed. Course locked in.
extra production and move in my fleets. And here we can see one of the downsides of playing for C1 Nexus. I would like to use this culture, but I don't feel like I have the resources to do so.
Priority target engaged.
Here we get slightly lucky because this is not a capital fleet. So we could actually just move in, and in the back I will back up my fleet with some destroyers, get a counter espionage down, and end my turn.
Priority target engaged.
So as you can see, we now have enough army strength to take this planet.
New priority established. Scientists have received your orders.
I will move my fleet. That's it for the turn. This was actually a high roll. Normally, if you only have 4 ranged ships, you will need 2 ranged attacks to take down the ships on Nexus, and if you have 6 ranged ships, you can one-shot them as Kelazan, and for other factions you need some luck.
Course locked in.
And now we can
Orders
move in,
confirmed.
can take some planets in the back.
System control established.
Here, somebody else was brave and also attacked Nexus, which is problematic. I can pick extra
Scientists have
strengths on my
received your
ships.
orders. New project under construction.
Actually,
Research priority confirmed.
can do this. And now I will decide to move in with my ranged fleet, just to make sure that no matter how many ships I lose, I will always have enough, in this case only 3 ships, to take Nexus. Now on the back, we will start building our
Deployment
captive
underway.
fleets like in a normal build. And you see it's turn 0. I will just use my whole ranged fleets. This has not much more use. Or,
Hostile planet
of course,
conquered.
it's better to first use our
Cultural
action.
push initiated.
Take
Spy
Nexus,
hunters
defend it,
activated.
or in this case maybe
Hostile planet conquered.
finally securing our support planet is slightly more important.
Hostile plot detected.
And we will have successfully gained Nexus on the first turn. This is also something that you should probably practice against AI, because there are like a few different things that you need to do to secure this so early on. First thing is you need to make sure that you find a way towards Nexus, which is not guaranteed. Like not always you will have like this double connection. Sometimes only one of the two systems has a connection. That's also why we took the exploration over here. And another thing is, of course, in the best case you have 6 ranged ships and 4 destroyers, which then equals 36 ammunitions. So that would be the starting 30 ammunition plus 1 ammunition depot over here. Or you find 2 planets to culture. There are like a few different ways to achieve that. But I think in general it's like important to know like 6 ranged fleets, I think in my opinion is like the best number you can have. It's also possible to pull off this strategy using capital ships. If you watched my Yondor God Queen guide, you might have seen me do C1 Nexus using battleships. But in my opinion, using ranged ships is slightly more reliable. Also, if let me quickly vote for something. If you are scared that someone will actually diplomacy Nexus, what you can do is, even if I don't see a player, if I click on their name, I can declare war on them. And then even if they diplomacy Nexus during the final turn or something like that, my ships will stay in the territory. Or, of course, wait, if I'm on the planet they cannot use diplomacy, but if I'm scared that they will use diplomacy the turn I will go into Nexus, they would actually just kick me out of Nexus, because when I arrive they have already taken the planet. So if somebody has the diplomatic vessel tech and he's next to Nexus and you are going for C1 Nexus with military, you can always declare war to make sure that you will get it. So yeah, I think from this position onwards, this apparently is no longer valid. Okay, interesting. Not sure why. But at this point,
Direction confirmed. Scientists have received your orders.
now we can basically start to play a normal game.
Reinforcements pending.
And our new topic is get up our
Construction
support.
underway.
As you can see, last game we already had more than 10 support at this point, even though we had a very bad start. But in this situation, we actually traded this early game boost for the 12 points from Nexus, which can be worth it.
Orders confirmed.
But also, of course, you need to factor in that now people will be scared of you, maybe treat you differently. They think you're winning. Like this player, for example, or this AI is now far less likely to give me a pact than before, so I maybe have to add a pact
Envoys
or a
dispatched.
tag to that to make it a good deal for him. Things like that we can
Scientists have received your orders.
pick up like more tags. I think from here on it's like you're basically back to the standard build. And yeah, I hoped this helped you a little bit. Maybe like you had completely no idea how you can even get Nexus that quickly. I hope like it got a little bit more clear how you would normally approach the early game on most leaders. So yeah, thank you all for watching and feel free to ask any comments in the comment section or just ask in the Stellaris Nexus or nowadays Nexus 5X Discord server. So thank you all for watching